Okay, welcome to the Jude Garden. Here's the wood chip pile where the arborists drop their wood chips for us to mulch everything with. It's a nice pile. One truckload, we can probably fit 2 or 3 there. Here's some swales that kind of went crazy wild. It's a little steep for them, so there was a little blowout spot, and the plan was to make some stone terraces to make it better, but didn't get around to it, and I'm moving back to Maine in 4 days, and I don't have time, but the people who are gonna work here in my absence have the opportunity to do what they want to improve this spot. Site improvement is always a good pattern design to aim for. Here's the little storage platform thing. There's got hand tools and buckets full of trash at the moment, but also you know, seedling trays and pots and whatnot, and cardboard and lumber and a rain barrel and a hose and a lawnmower, which might not run anymore, but what has been used for us to mow this lawn, to mulch the beds, and to add for compost. The rain barrel gets filled with water from a creek right over there where that bucket is, so you walk over the 2 5-gallon buckets at a time. It takes about 10 trips, fill in this barrel, and you can gravity feed the garden with that. Got this really long row, goes down the border of the property. Hey. So all these beds here are more or less on contour. That's a bunch of arugula going to seed, which established the first contour. And it's a double dug bed. So the idea of this first garden is to do lots of different types of soil building techniques. So it goes double dig, no dig, just like sheet mulch with cardboard and compost. This next one here is a swale. This is usually my preferred method. These 2 beds are still pretty weedy, didn't get quite to weeding and getting the weeds out of the paths. Usually all the paths have cardboard and wood chips like this, but this is the spot I haven't really made it to yet. Here is another different type of sheet mulch. This is just a continual mulching sheet mulch, just grass, hay, leaves, whatever. Just keep on piling it up and makes compost from the top down. Here's a hugelkultur bed, very shallow one. We only filled the logs to about level with grade, but we filled the trench with old oyster mushroom logs. So for a while there was mushrooms popping out of the bed kind of sporadically whenever they wanted to, so we're getting oyster mushrooms out of this as well as veggies. Here we're back to the nice sheet mulched area. This bed is full of greens planted by the people from the Celebration commune down the road. They're gonna be active in keeping this garden going and reaping the benefits from it. Just some supplies, some fuel, wheelbarrow, sandbags to hold remade down. The bamboo came from the creek over yonder as tomato and other vining plant trellises. And then we got some compost bins here made out of pallets, obviously, kind of back to back, double wide, so each half of the garden has 4 double wide bins, and they all have varying degrees of composted material. A lot of this is recent from the weeding of the over winter growth, which is a lot, and constantly weeding. Really just weeded all this this triangular spiral bed this morning in the downpour. That was fun, as well as this arugula, spinach, lettuce bed. Just trying to get things super good before I go. We'll see how close I get. All along here, there's the creek right beyond, and our neighbors in this house volunteered to help and clear all that brush. It was very tangly and claustrophobic back there, but they did some weed whacking and stuff yesterday. That was nice. And then this right here is a trench I dug. So for when the creek overflows, it has to get over another trench in this berm before it gets into the garden. And I planted that full of trees and shrubs for my friend Randall, who's another permaculture enthusiast, colleague, friend of mine. So we put some of his leftover extra plants in there, as well as many weeds, but also lots of native beneficial plants. Here's an herb spiral with just a bunch of rocks, basically a pile of compost that I put rocks on in a spiral, and transplanted plants and direct seeded plants volunteered, the whole process of like, what's a weed? Is this weed good? Is this weed a food? All these lamb's quarters in here I'm leaving. They're one of my favorite greens. Lots of overwintered marjoram or oregano, not quite sure which it is. Lots of parsley made it. There's basil and dill and cilantro coming up. There's some chives. The only thing that died was sage. There's a dead sage plant in there somewhere. But anyways, here's the other side of the compost bins. Just got more biomass slowly doing its thing, turning back into plant food. These are a bunch of self-seeded, nice fancy lettuces that came up in this compost I've been spreading around to different gardens. And so now we're at the mandala garden, which is roughly my business logo. It's kind of an approximation of the seed of life symbol. It's kind of just got more straight edges on it than that. It's typically a bunch of circles that interlock to make what looks like flower petals. So this is, you know, it's like that. If I was to add more circles, you would see it. I'd have to make this garden 5 times bigger for it to really be visible in that way. But we just got this cleaned out. We grew the 3 sisters corn beans and squash in here last year. I think that's the plan again with the celebration folks. But over the winter and most recently in the spring, lots of Stropharia mushrooms have been coming out that I inoculated in the wood chips last year. So here's some of those. We've been getting, probably 5 to 10 pounds a week for the past 3 months or so. So they've been super abundant and delicious. Freezing them, grilling them, stir frying them, adding them to everything we can. So this is just like doing the mandala gardens a lot. I feel like it's really nice to look at and walk around in, and feels pretty space efficient, like bed to path ratio. This is all mulched with the lawn, with this lawn, and used to do that lawn over there too. So these are all just like inverted sod beds. You know, the paths are sunken, the beds are raised, the grass is flipped over into the beds. So a minimal amount of material has to come in for the beds. A lot of material has to come in for the paths, for the wood chips. This is at least a whole pile like that, probably more, went into this. And then in the last section, we got these little boundary defining triangle things that kind of just fill the void between these circular areas. But this is a hugel culture I built last fall, and it's got a lot of clover and volunteer, you know, wild plants, wild geranium, I don't know what else, a bunch of other things that I decided I liked. And then I planted these collards on there last fall and harvested them and letting them go to seed to just drop their seeds and make kind of a pseudo-naturalized collard ground cover thing going on. But I seeded new collards and beets in there as well. But I kind of like the kind of flat top of the hugel with the sloped sides where the perennials go and the flat tops where the annuals go. Kind of my thinking about that way of doing it. And then there's another hugel that me and some of the celebration folks made, I don't know, about a month ago. It's got carrots and garlic and onions and beets coming up in there. A couple more end border triangle beds. And in between the hugels, we have these 2, what I'm calling sod pods. They're like hyper raised beds because I made these paths super wide because it's kind of just like an experiment in like lots of mobility. They're a little narrower right here in particular, but the idea around this was to make a figure-8 path design. So you walk around that one sod pod, and then you can walk this way around the other one and make sort of an infinity symbol. So you come back in the middle, and there's a frisbee. See, they're so abundant they grow frisbees. Here it comes. Whoop! Nice snag. So yeah, sod pods. About 3 or 4 layers of sod that will just continually break down and turn into super fertile soil. You know, always adding compost and mulch every year. That's my general approach to things. I like to, you know, invert sod to build soil and make paths lower for the water to go, so you're kind of passively irrigating but also allowing for drainage in the bed. I feel like it's kind of one of the most material efficient ways to do things, especially when wood chips are free and compost is expensive. You know, I also do sheet mulch. I try all the things. That one seems to be the most efficient for me. But anyways, that's the Jude Garden. We name it the Jude Garden because that little guy over there's name is Jude, and the last kid who lived here, his name was Jude. So that's actually the first person I met here. He's a friendly little guy. And met his parents, and they're super cool too. They ended up paying our house, and we're good friends. So it's definitely the Jude Garden, because Judes keep coming here. So yeah, this is one of my last times being here, and I hope people in the community continue to take care of and love this garden. And I guess I'll see you next time in Maine as I start from scratch, doing the whole permaculture neighborhood gardening thing, of which this is one example of. So thanks for watching. Take it easy and keep on doing permaculture. All right, later.